Will the Rangers ask Mika Zibanejad to waive his no-move clause? We break down Mika's recent comments on the matter and discuss why there's actually a pretty good chance that he'll be back next season.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1294 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we are officially into the offseason now. The Rangers obviously had a rough one, just to put it very mildly. You guys watched this team just like I did, and certainly you know what I'm talking about, but it is now time to essentially begin the healing process, turn the page a little bit, and start talking about the Ranger offseason and some of the biggest questions that need to be answered, not the least of which is the future of Mika Zibanejad. He recently made some comments. I think it was just with one game to go in the regular season. He talked to the New York Post about the topic of his future and what's going on with the Rangers, and specifically, if he wants to be here, would he be willing to go somewhere else? Because he does have the full no-move clause, as many of us are very well aware. But this is what Mika had to say about it. We're going to have some comments from Mika here, and I'll share my thoughts along the way, and then I'll kind of assess everything at the end and talk about what I think is most likely to happen with Mika Zibanejad for next season. We're also, at the end of today's episode, going to discuss Sam Carrick winning a well-deserved team award that's voted on by the Ranger players. But again, we start with Mika and these comments that he made to the New York Post. I know what my contract says. Both parties agreed to it. And like I said, I think I've earned it. Until it's time to adjust it, I have no plans of going anywhere. I've invested a lot of years here. All right, so my first question about this is, I don't really know what he means by adjust his contract. Maybe he's talking about when this contract runs up and if he keeps playing hockey and signs some other contract. I mean, maybe that's it. But he's not really wrong about any of this. I mean, we can argue. I know some people are going to point out the fact that he said that he earned it. He earned the contract because the bottom line is his play before he signed this contract dictated a deal of this length and this amount of money. And the two parties agreed to it fair and square. Now, you might raise a point of contention with him earning it this season, the season that just concluded here. And I think that's certainly fair. But the bottom line, the contract is the contract, and there's nothing that can really be done about it once it's been signed. He was also asked, Mika Zibanejad, this is a question that he was proposed after the regular season ended, the 4-0 win over Tampa, and the Rangers season obviously concluded. He was asked to, assess his feelings for the season as a whole. And he said, kind of empty. Coming to the rink this afternoon with the weather being like it is, I'm used to kind of gearing up for the playoffs, but that's not the case now. And I hear something like that, and I say, you know what? Use it as motivation for next season. That's not just Mika Zibanejad. That's anybody else on this Ranger team. I don't think these guys really want to be feeling like this at the end of next season, and hopefully they won't be. I will say right off the bat here, in Mika's defense, it is nice that he wants to be here. And he's probably got a lot of different reasons for why he wants to remain a New York Ranger. Part of it probably has to do with his family. He seems to be settled here. He's been here for a number of years now. I mean, he's got to be pushing like a decade with the team, or is he right at a decade? It's somewhere in that ballpark for sure. That's all well and good, but I also hope there are other reasons that he wants to be here. I hope it's the fact that being a New York Ranger actually means something to him. That's a theme that the Rangers, I think, really need to attack this offseason. Figure out who really wants to be here. Figure out who's going to play for the Ranger franchise, who's going to play for this city, who's going to play for this fan base, who does it really mean a lot to be a member of the New York Rangers. And I hope that's the case with Mika Zibanejad, that he really does care about that, and he wants to be part of the solution. He wants to figure things out, wants to represent this team, this city, play for these fans, all that good stuff. Being a Ranger, bottom line, it has to mean something to you. And again, I think that that's what a lot of fans want to see, not just from Mika, but a lot of different players on this team. They got to know that these guys care, because there were times this season where I think it was more than fair to question how much effort these guys are putting in, how much they really care about, what's going on. Because this season spiraled out of control in a heck of a hurry and never really got back on track. So I'm going to offer a prediction for what I think is going to happen with Mika Zibanejad this offseason and going into next season. Do I think he's still going to be here? We're going to discuss that in just a second. But let me also say one more thing right here about, these comments and just kind of the idea of Mika Zibanejad potentially being traded this offseason. If you're Chris Drury, and this is all assuming that he's not fired, by the way, but I don't think he's going to be. If you're Chris Drury or the Ranger general manager, then you need to understand that the full no move clause was agreed on, and you can't really strong arm somebody into waiving it. Now, you can try to talk them into waiving it. And I think if you're Drury, if you really want to trade Mika Zibanejad, which if the Rangers can do it, I'm not going to argue against it. I would not be opposed to a Mika Zibanejad trade at this stage in the game. But I think what you got to do if you're Drury, learn from the mistakes that were made this past offseason with the Jacob Trouba stuff leaking and everything, the way that was handled. If you want to go ahead and shop Mika Zibanejad, do it, but do it quietly. Don't send out a memo. Don't send out your carrier pigeon, okay? Figure out a way to do this behind the scenes, operate in the shadows. Figure out a way to get in touch with these GMs, keep everything airtight, don't let anything leak, and figure out if there's a team or multiple teams that would be interested in acquiring Mika Zibanejad. Once you do that and it starts to pick up steam a little bit, then that's when you can go to Mika Zibanejad about the possibility of waiving the no-move clause. Because if you shop Mika Zibanejad and it doesn't go anywhere and nobody's interested in him anyway, then you gain nothing by allowing Mika Zibanejad to know that you were shopping him. Just keep it to yourself. And like I said, work in the shadows. I feel like that's the most common way to do this. And if no trade ever materializes, then Mika never even needs to know about it. But that's just my 2 cents on the matter. That's what I would be doing if I was the Ranger GM, which obviously I am not. But in just a second, we're going to shift our attention to Mika Zibanejad, his future with the team, and how I ultimately think this entire thing will play out. We will get to that in just a second. All right, we just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always a great go-to. The satisfying crunch of opening each shell, it is like snack meditation. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works just as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. Unlocked on New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers as always for, sticking with this team. I know we're into the offseason now, and mercifully so. I think this season really needed to end, and I think a lot of people would certainly agree with me there. But again, stick with Locked On New York Rangers. We're not slowing down on here, not in the slightest. We're actually recording this episode a couple of days before it publishes, but my understanding is that Ranger breakup day will be Monday. That seems to be the rumor on the interweb, and that's when you get these very candid interviews with players at the end of the season, talking about everything that happened this past season, what's to come next season, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like a lot of those interviews, you see players kind of let down their guard a little bit more and speak a little bit more honestly and a little bit more openly at the end of the season rather than right in the middle of a season. So we have that to look forward to. I'm sure there'll be a couple of interesting talking points coming out of breakup day. But we'll get to that when we get to that. For right now, Mika Zibanejad, his future with the team, how exactly does all this play out? First of all, I touched on this just a second ago, but I want to elaborate on it a little bit more. Mika Zibanejad, fair and square, has the full no-move clause in his contract. He is under zero obligation to waive it. If a player is not allowed to use his full no-move clause, then to me, they're pretty worthless. You can be mad at the situation. You could be mad at Mika Zibanejad for the way that he played this past season, especially the way that he started, when it just looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world other than playing hockey for the New York Rangers. That was just a miserable start that he got off to before he picked it up a little bit, down the stretch. You could be mad about all that. You could be mad at the contract that was offered to Mika Zibanejad. You could be mad at the Rangers for giving out all these full no-move clauses left and right. That's all fair game. But if a player has it, the player has it, and he's allowed to use it in any way that he wants to use it. So that's the one thing I will back up Mika Zibanejad on. I was critical of him this season, just like a lot of you were as well. Again, especially in the first half and that just awful stretch that the Rangers went through in November and December. But how do I think this entire thing shakes out? What's next for Mika Zibanejad? Has he played his final game as a New York Ranger, or will he be back next season? I do think opening night next year, you will see Mika Zibanejad on the roster. And I feel like I'm actually kind of in the minority when it comes to that. I think a lot of people are just kind of planning on Kreider and Mika to be gone. I do think Kreider will be traded. We talked about that a little bit in the last episode. I also think K'Andre Miller is going to be traded. The Rangers just seem hesitant to extend him to a big time, long-term, big money contract, and I can understand why, given his regression in the last couple of seasons. But Mika, for a couple of reasons, is the one out of that group of three there that I think is actually the most likely to return next season. I could be wrong. Maybe Mika gets traded. He waives his no-move clause, and maybe K'Andre Miller's back. I mean, I don't know. You never know for sure how it's going to go. But of those three, I think that Mika is the most likely to be back. Is it my preference for Mika to return next year? If I'm being completely honest, no. I would be completely open to the idea of the Rangers just giving Mika Zibanejad away in what would essentially be a salary dump, just because now you've got $8.5 million more in cap space for this upcoming season, and maybe you can go out there and fill out your roster with that, kind of rebuild on the fly, which is what it seems like the Rangers are trying to do here, a retooling as opposed to a full-fledged tear-down rebuild. But another reason why I don't think Mika will get traded is I just don't know who's going to want him. This is an underrated aspect of any potential Mika Zibanejad trade, because I think right now, a lot of people, and understandably so, are really fixated on the full no-move clause. Can we convince Mika to waive it? Will he waive it? Will he go over here? Will he go over there? Would he accept a trade to this team but not that team? Is he in any way open to being dealt away from the New York Rangers? And certainly I understand why, a lot of our attentions go in that direction. But what honestly might be just as big of a hurdle to get over here is the fact that I don't think teams are lining up for the services of Mika Zibanejad right now. You got to think about the season that he just had. He's 31 years old, which isn't actually, he literally just turned 32 like a day or two ago. So he's 32 years old at the start of next season, which isn't that old, obviously, but he's got another 5 years left on the contract. So that's going to take him right through his mid-30s, getting close to his late 30s. And he just had a really rough season, and he signed for 5 more years. This isn't a case like with Jacob Trouba. When the Rangers traded him, there were less than 2 full years left on his deal. With Kreider, if he was traded this offseason, there's only 2 years left on his deal. Mika Zibanejad has 5 years left on his deal and $8.5 million per season. Imagine if Mika Zibanejad was a player on just some random Western Conference team. Like, I got my standings board over here. Let's say, I don't know. Let's say the Kraken. The Kraken and the Rangers always seem to do business together, right? So let's say he's on the Kraken, right? And he just had the exact same season for the Kraken that he had with the New York Rangers. Would you guys want the Rangers to go out there and trade for Mika Zibanejad right now? Probably not. I think that's fair to say, right? And so you got to remember, put yourself in the shoes of any other team that might even be slightly interested in Mika Zibanejad. Why would you want to take on such a long contract, such an expensive contract for a guy that just had probably his worst season of his career? I don't think that teams are lining up around the block for that, if I'm being completely honest here. So again, but between the no-move clause and the difficulty that the Rangers would probably have finding a trade partner, I think Mika Zibanejad is back on this team next season. And I'm not thrilled about it, but it's one of those things where you're kind of in a situation where you just have to make the best of it if you're the Rangers. And I threw this idea out there on Twitter the other day because I was kind of talking about this a little bit and kind of threw out the idea that I don't think Mika Zibanejad is going to be off this team come opening night next year. So this is what you do if you're the Rangers. If you can't get Mika to waive the no-move clause, or even if he's somewhat willing to do it, but nobody wants to trade for him, you bring him back next year, give him a clean slate, you give him a chance. He's here anyway. You're stuck with him. You have to try to figure out a way to make this work. So you give him a clean slate, and you connect him at the hip with JT Miller. And again, you just hope for the best. JT Miller, when he was traded, a lot of us were kind of wondering, like, I wonder which Ranger is going to benefit the most from this deal. It was Mika Zibanejad. I don't even think it can be debated. Not to say that everything was perfect post JT Miller trade with Mika Zibanejad, but he certainly played a heck of a lot better than he was playing, before that happened. Mika initially started to pick things up when the calendar turned to 2025. That's when he got it going a little bit. The Rangers had that nice run in January. He was kind of in the middle of everything there. But I feel like even though his numbers were going up there, when his style of play changed at least a little bit, that's when he was put on the same line with JT Miller. That's when we saw Mika Zibanejad actually forecheck a little bit, actually finish a couple of checks. There was one where, he put a guy right on his back, right in open ice. And we hadn't seen that from Mika Zibanejad in a very long time. So again, if Mika's back next year, it's not a perfect situation, but you got to make the best of it. And like I just said, I think keeping him on the same line as JT Miller will certainly keep him honest. And to kind of back up, just my idea here that Mika did play better down the stretch. If we look at Mika Zibanejad's final 46 games in the month of January to, the end of the season there. Again, 46 games, 14 goals, 27 assists, 41 points. It's not too shabby. And we're talking about something that isn't just a small sample size. That's more than half of the season, and he's flirting with point per game territory there. So, again, if they could move on from him in a quick and painless way, I'd be all for it, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you want a situation where, you put him in the booth every night and make him a healthy scratch, because I see people throw out that idea too. And yeah, technically the Rangers could do that, but think of all the drama we just went through this entire season. Do you really want to start next year by telling Mika Zibanejad you're going to be a healthy scratch until we trade you? You could say what you want about Mika, but I have no doubt that he has friends in that locker room, that he has people that certainly respect him in that locker room. That's not going to fly very well with this team. And honestly, it's going to be a messy, ugly situation that's only going to get worse and worse if they get into some kind of a standoff with that. So the best thing to do is, again, to give him the clean slate. If he won't waive the no move, then you got to make the best of the situation, and you hope for the best next season, and you keep your fingers crossed. And above all else, you keep him on the same line with JT Miller. That's pretty much all you can do. So in just a minute, we're going to shift our attention to Sam Carrick. Sam Carrick recently won a very well-deserved team award. Going to talk about that, the season that he had with the Rangers, in just a second. All right, we just want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you will get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. From three-pointers to steals and assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, let's go wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by shifting gears a little bit, talking about Sam Carrick and the fact that he is the 2024-2025 winner of the Rangers Players Player Award. These awards, these different team awards, they kind of vary as far as obviously how long they've been around. The Mr. Ranger Award, I want to say that's only been around for like 3 or 4 seasons at this point. But this one surprised me. I didn't realize how far this one went back. The Players Player Award has been around since the 1958-1959 season with the New York Rangers. So this is not a new thing by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that it's a very well-deserved, like I said, award for Sam Carrick. Give you guys the exact verbiage here, the Players Player Award is an annual award given to the player who best exemplifies what it means to be a team player as determined by his teammates. So yeah, it's pretty much everything that you would expect it to be. And that's another thing that's really cool about it is that different awards are given out in different ways. Sometimes the fans vote on it. Sometimes it's media members. But this one is voted on exclusively by the players. And, as far as like picking a winner for this award, I mean, I didn't really think about it. But now that I am thinking about it kind of in retrospect here, it does kind of feel like this award was Sam Carrick's for the taking. He just feels like somebody that we would be very well liked in that locker room. I mean, if we're being honest, the Ranger locker room did not seem like a very healthy place this year. Everything from players speaking out about their role to, post-game quotes where it seems like certain guys are kind of lacking in accountability. to us wondering where in the world is the leadership on this team? Does anybody step up behind closed doors? There seemed to be nights where the Rangers just weren't very enthusiastic about doing their jobs. And that's about the nicest way that I can possibly put it. So, for Carrick to win this, I think it really speaks volumes about how his teammates feel about him. We're sort of, with the Rangers, in this situation where we've got this blend of the old guard and the new guard. We've got, obviously some veterans in that locker room and guys that have been on this team for a very long time. By that same token, we've got some fresh-faced rookies who just got here, whether we're talking about Berard or Offman or Perreault. So we've got a mix, right, obviously. And Carrick's kind of in a situation where he's sort of somewhere in the middle. Now, on one hand, he's a veteran. He's 33 years old. But on the other hand, he just got here too. And I don't know what the final vote tally was among the players who voted on this award. Did Carrick win it in a landslide, or was it kind of close? But I think it speaks volumes again about Carrick, the fact that he can come in here and essentially develop a good, positive relationship with every player on the team, or just about every player on the team, or at least enough players on the team that they would vote for him to win this award. Obviously, Carrick made good with, the veterans on this team, the guys that are longstanding New York Rangers that have been here a long time. And obviously also, became a leader or at least a good teammate of the younger guys as well. So for him to kind of be that bridge there, that kind of go between, he could have very easily been a man on an island in that locker room, especially this year, because again, he doesn't really fit into either group. He's not a guy that's been here forever, and he's not one of the young guys either. So it would have been very easy for Carrick to just kind of get lost in the mix in there, especially when you consider what a rough season this was and how downtrodden this team looked at times and just how bad the vibes were. But instead, the exact opposite happened. It sounds like Carrick really kind of became a really good teammate of everybody. And, every team, every sport of every level, you need to have some of those glue guys or glue girls. You need a couple of those players that kind of just hold everything together, bring everybody together. And it sounds like Sam Carrick is that guy and has embraced that role. I mean, if we're going by the fact that he won this award, I don't see how you could argue otherwise. The award obviously kind of would suggest that. And, Carrick just in general was one of my favorite players on the team this year. I just really like the mindset. I like the work ethic. Sam and Joe were talking about this in the season finale when they brought up Sam Carrick. Basically, that he's one of those guys that kind of, if the game's not going the right way for the Rangers, he's somebody that looks to go out there and makes a difference, looks to change things up a little bit, change the energy of the game a little bit. And we've seen examples of that where, he'll chirp somebody or he'll mix it up with somebody after the whistle. He'll drop the gloves if he has to. He's somebody that plays physically. He's not necessarily the biggest guy either, but somebody that's going out there and looking to make a positive difference maker. And I think somebody that very much understands his role as usually a fourth liner. We saw him on the third line a little bit this season, but a fourth line guy is going to go out there, watch out for teammates, win faceoffs. He was close to 55% success rate on the dot this season. Good penalty killer as well. Just do a lot of the grunt work, a lot of the dirty work. And, watching these guys interact on the ice, it just always seems to me like he's been a really good teammate. And again, him winning this award certainly confirms that. Carrick is still under contract with the Rangers for 2 more years. And, there's no guarantees that he's going to play out that entire contract with the Rangers. But at this point, I don't think too many people would be opposed to that for people that are fans of this team, and follow this team day in and day out. The fact that he just won this award tells me more than ever that you need somebody like this back in the locker room next season. I probably would have said that regardless, but you saw how just broken this team looked this season. You need guys in there that are going to pull everybody together, that are going to, again, be a good teammate and, hopefully get things moving in the right direction this season. That's not to say that he's going to be a superstar, because he's not, but, I think it's been proven pretty plainly this season that Carrick is part of the solution and not part of the problem. And the fact that he won over so many Ranger fans, again, I think that says a lot about him too, because Ranger fans, a lot of us, sometimes it's hard to warm up to these random journeyman veterans that end up on the team, because a lot of times there's this perception, real or otherwise, that that random veteran, he's blocking a path to the NHL for this prospect or that prospect or whatever it might be. So the fact that Carrick came in here, unheralded free agent signing, won over most of the fans. Again, I think that tells you everything you need to know about the brand of hockey that he played for the Rangers this season. And I think as far as like the best moment for Carrick this season, I mean, what else could it be? It had to be that overtime winner against the Devils. There was a situation where the Rangers were in overtime, and it was during that stretch in January where we kind of thought maybe things were turning around a little bit. It was actually the third game of the 10-game stretch where the Rangers went 7-0-3, and this might have been the most dramatic win out of the entire bunch. Carrick was out there in overtime. He steals the puck from Jack Hughes, 2-on-1 for the Rangers. Riley Smith passes to Carrick for the one-timer and the 3-2 win. So, again, this is kind of when it felt like the Rangers were getting it together. Obviously, it just didn't last, but obviously a very nice moment for Sam Carrick nonetheless, and somebody that I'm really excited that he's still under contract. Again, he's not somebody that's going to make or break your franchise, but given everything we saw this season, Sam Carrick should be back next season, playing essentially the same role that he did this season. And I certainly hope that that's the case and would also expect that that will be the case. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, that is @jchik17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.